Morning guys, welcome back. Now I would say that it's an absolutely beautiful morning this morning, except my car's up to its antics again. The last few days I've been waking up to a flat battery. Now before I go any further, if you've got a completely dead battery and you can't get the central locking undone to get the bonnet open, I do have another video on how to overcome that problem, and I will put that video at the end of this one, where I normally put a couple of other videos, and I'll put the link to it in the comments box below for you so you can see that. But what I've been waking up to is the fact that it will unlock the car and then you get the click, 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 and she won't start. So I've located the problem and the part is on order. So at the moment we still have the problem, but we know what it is. But what I'm going to do is go through the process I went through to find the problem for you and share that with you today. So initially, first morning that I got up and found the battery flat, first thing that goes through your mind is, what did I leave turned on? So you check the light switch, you check the interior light isn't turned on, you check that you haven't left boot or bonnet sort of open, on the safety latch, so the little interior light hasn't stayed on any of those, and obviously it hadn't. Second thing, of course, is you can't do anything with a flat battery. So got a friend to jump start the car, let it run for half an hour, turned it off, restarted, fine, no problem at all. So there's the possibility that it is just one of those freak things that happen from time to time, and you never ever know why. So the car was fine for the rest of the day, no ignition warning light, started fine, no problems, brilliant. Come out the next morning, same thing again, battery's flat, just click, click, click on the starter. So clearly, or reasonably clearly, either the battery is going flat overnight or something is running the battery flat overnight. You get your tripwires set up, you get your cameras set up to catch anybody that's charging their phone or boiling their travel kettle. No, I'm just joking there. So we need to do a few checks to find out why the battery is going flat overnight, and that actually is reasonably straightforward and simple. There's usually only 3 causes that give you a flat battery. The battery itself, your alternator, or something in the car is draining the power. So we're going to use good old multimeter. I'll run through the basic settings on this, because quite often people say, well, I don't really know how to use the multimeter. So we're going to be using 2 basic settings on the multimeter. One, I don't know if I can get that close up there for you. One is volts, and that's set on 20 volts DC for battery. DC's for battery. And the connectors, if I can come around there, is the bottom 2 connectors. Now the other setting, I'm going to turn that off for a moment. The other setting we're going to be using a little later on is, if I can just pull that out, plug that in there, is an amperage test. Amperage, basically, if you think of electricity as water and a hose pipe, your wire as a hose pipe, your amperage is how much pressure you've got in that hose pipe, how much you've turned the tap on, how fast the water is being pushed through the hose. The faster the electricity is being pushed through a wire, the higher the amperage. So basically, the more amperage you've got, the more something is draining the power from your battery. It's sucking that power, it's sucking that electricity through that cable. And amperage will tell you how fast whatever it is sucking the power through your cable. Hope that kind of makes sense. So that's on a 10 amp. I can get that there. I don't know if you can see it. Hope you can. That's on a 10 amp setting, and as you can see, I've had to move the red connector up to the top one which is the one for amps. So that's the only two settings that we're going to use for these tests. So nice and simple. My belief with tests is the easier and simpler a test is, and the more conclusive a test is, the better a test you're going to get. Because complicated tests you can muck up, and complicated tests you can misread the results and misinterpret the results. So there we go. The first thing we're going to do is test the battery voltage. I'm going to just try and get, I don't normally get in under the bonnet, but to make life a little easier to do the video, I'm just going to get one foot in the bonnet. Now, some people will prefer you to disconnect the battery, some people say it doesn't really matter. But all we do, we put the black prong into the black, red prong into the plus, so that's plus is red, minus is your black, and if I hold that, you can see that there you go, we've got 12.61 volts, so anything between 12.6 and 12.7 is a fully charged battery. Now, bear in mind that if the car's been stood overnight, you've got things like your radio memory, your computer memory, your receiver unit for your remote lock-in, and your alarm system are all going to draw power from the battery. So it could be a little lower than 12.6, you could even do 12.5. Basically, 12 volts is a flat battery, anything below 12 volts is a serious problem. So as you can see there, we've got fully charged battery, so there's no problem there. Now, the second test that we can do, and you need another person really to do this, and I haven't got anyone with me, so I'll just have to tell you the second test. The second test on the battery is a load test, and simply what that means is you get someone to start the car. During the start process, while the engine's turning over and firing, your voltage should not drop below 9.6. If it drops below 9.6, your battery can't handle a load, so you've got a problem with your battery. So that's your two main battery tests. Okay. Now, the third test that you can do is a charging test. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and start the engine. So same thing again, the two things are still connected in. Okay, so we've now got the engine running, and we're now doing what's classed as a charging test. As you can see there, we've got 14.43 volts from the alternator. So that's the alternator topping the battery up, and that's perfectly fine. 14.5 is a good figure. Anything between 13.8, 14.5 is okay. 14.6 or 14.7, you could start to have problems with the alternator trying to overcharge the battery, and that can damage the battery. Then often you get signs, you get corrosion start to build up around the terminals on your battery. That is an indication that you really need to do this check, and just check that your alternator is giving out the correct voltage. So we've done three tests, and as you can notice there, you can pretty much do all the tests in one hit. You can class it as one single test if you want. So you've tested the battery voltage with the car turned off. You've done a load test on the battery by watching that the voltage doesn't drop below 6.9 when you start the car, and you're doing a charge test on your alternator to show that the alternator is actually charging the battery. Now I'm just going to go and turn the car off again, and now that you can see, now that the car's turned off, the battery's dropped back down to 12.7, and it will sort of, over about an hour, it'll drop back down to around 12.6, which is roughly 12.6, 12.7 is a good battery. If the car's been stood overnight, you might be as low as 12.5. Okay, so what we're at now is a situation where everything appears to be fine. The battery is good, the load test was good, the alternator is charging. So it looks very much as if something is draining the battery overnight. So just to do a quick recap there, we've had 2 mornings where we've got up and the battery's been flat. We've just done a battery test, the battery charge is fine, the battery's not flat. We've done a load test on the battery and that was fine. We've done a charge test and that's come out fine. So it looks as if something is draining the battery overnight. Now a very simple and very easy way to test that theory is to disconnect the negative side of your battery at night. Make sure you've got your radio code, obviously. Disconnect your battery just before you go to bed, or when you park the car up for the evening. Come out in the morning, do your battery test again, see what voltage you've got on your battery. That will tell you straight away whether your battery is good or not. If your battery is flat, if your battery is down to 12 or less than 12 volts, then you know your problem is your battery. If your battery is still up at 12.6, 12.7 volts, then that's fine. You reconnect the lead, try the car, and if it's got 12.6, 12.7 volts in the battery, it's going to start the car. You know it's going to start the car. But you start the car up, you know the problem is not your battery. Also, if you're not completely confident with the tests we've just done, and they are reasonably straightforward and simple tests, you can run into any sort of tyre, battery, exhaust store, or most car accessory shops will do a battery test for you free of charge. So you've got 3 ways there of testing your battery. You've got the tests I've shown you with the multimeter. You've got the test by simply disconnecting the battery overnight, and you've got the going to a local store, local garage, and they will usually do a free test, so you get a second opinion on it. So, to find the drain on a battery from the car, we need to change our multimeter from the volt setting that we were using to the amperage setting. Now, don't let the amperage put you... I know I explained earlier basically what amperage is, but all you need to know is that you're testing for an amperage figure. So as long as you know what figure to look for, it doesn't matter if you don't understand really what amperage is. But again, I'll change that one. I've moved the red lead up onto the amperage. It tells you, it says A is the letter they use for amperage, so it's maximum 10A DC, so it's maximum 10 amps DC for this multimeter. You've got a milliamp scale up the side here. I don't really use the milliamp scale, I'll explain why, or it will become clear as we go along. So we've got it set on the 10 amp scale, and we've got the red lead set into the 10 amp socket, ready to do an amperage check. So that's our battery drain test. Okay, so to do your drain test, first thing you need to do is disconnect the negative cable on your battery. Then what you do, I'll put that up there. This is going to be tricky to try and get the camera on. Hopefully I can get it in there for you. And that's what I'm going to try and do. I don't know if you're going to be able to see them settings with that there. But essentially what you do, again, your black probe goes onto the cable, your red probe onto the terminal. Now, it doesn't matter if you put them on the wrong way round, because you'll just get a positive reading rather than a negative reading, and we're looking for a negative reading. Now, I don't know if you can see that. What I'm going to try and do, let's try and here. It's a bit like holding Chinese chopsticks. Right. And then I'm going to bring that up to there for you and try and see. Whoops. Okay, now we've got a 0.38, 0.29 to 0.3 at start. I just moved. Just bear with me. Get that back on there. Ow, 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 ow. Right, you can see there. We've got around a 0.3 0.3 of an amp discharge. So something is draining 0.3 of an amp. Now, you have 1,000 milliamps to an amp. So that 0.3, which is moving around, hang on, let's try and get that back. I do apologise here, it's trying to get the cables on there. There you go. That 0.3 point there is almost at the 0.4 there. So there's 1,000 milliamps to an amp, so that's 300 milliamp draw. That's a 300 milliamp drain on the battery, which isn't acceptable. Usually, all the various bits that stay on, like your radio memory, your computer memory, your alarm system, your receiver for your remote locking, you're looking at around 25 to 30 milliamps draw on your battery. Most places will say absolute maximum draw you ever want to get on your battery is 75 milliamps. So 300 milliamp draw is completely unacceptable, and that's clearly why the battery is being run flat overnight. So the thing we've got to do now is find it. The way to find it, or one of the ways to find it, again, do exactly as we just done. Keep your meter on your battery with your terminals on there, and then pull out one fuse at a time from the fuse box till you find the one that gets rid of the draw, and then you found the circuit that is doing the battery draw. Now that's easy done if you've got crocodile clips that will go on these, or if you've got a friend that can pull the fuses while you're watching the meter. Me being me, doing it on my own, and couldn't really be asked with pulling every single fuse, and I've got the book with all the fuses in. Make sure you have got your book with your fuses in, or you've got access to the page on the internet to the fuses. And what I did, quite simply, I just pulled all the fuses out of the fuse box, left the battery connected overnight, and then come out in the morning to see if the battery is still charged. If the battery is still charged, then you start working through your fuses to find the thing, and there's no other way. You just got to work through one fuse at a time till you find the culprit that's causing the problem, and then obviously whichever one it is, you've got to work at fixing that problem. And I can't go, it's too much in this video to go into each one of the fuse circuits as to what could cause the problem, so you will have to then work on that particular system. However, in my case, I still came out to a flat battery. So that means that whatever is drawing the current from the battery is not on a fused circuit. So you've got to start looking at things that don't use a fused circuit. Well, one of the rare things that I've come across in the past that tends to cause a problem is the alternator regulator pack. Because remember, when we did the charging test, the alternator is charging. And in the voltage regulator unit on the back of the alternator, that's what controls the voltage so that it doesn't go above at 14.5 and fry your battery. What it also does, you have little diodes in that pack, and those little diodes are like a non-return valve. So the electricity can flow from the alternator into the battery, but because of the diodes, it can't flow from the battery back into the alternator. If those diodes start to fail, then your battery can drain through the alternator. It is quite rare. This is only the second time I've come across this sort of problem. So what I did, or what I would have liked to have done, is completely disconnected the alternator. Unfortunately, on this you can't get, with modern cars, with modern cars, because of the high amperage that alternators put out, you have a heavy duty cable on them for charging the battery, and then the separate plug that controls the rest of the circuitry on the alternator. In the old days, dare I say it, the alternators were only like 45 amps, so it was all done from the one plug. So you pulled the one plug off, test your alternator that way for drainage. But fortunately with the modern cars you can't. You've got one large cable, which is the charge cable, then you've got the plug with the two smaller wires in. and you can't get at the small plug without taking the throttle body off, and I wasn't going to start doing all that. But I did take the main cable off. I did undo the main cable from the alternator, left the battery connected overnight, and voila, in the morning the battery was still fully charged. So it appears that our problem is the voltage regulator pack on the back of the alternator that's causing the problem. So the alternator is charging the car, is charging the battery during the day when you're using the car, but when the car's sitting overnight, the alternator is also discharging the battery. And that's another common thing where you don't get the alternator warning light come on, because the warning light comes on when the alternator stops charging, and it is charging. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It sounds a lot more complicated than what it really is. But I hope that makes sense, and I hope that gives you some idea of how to test your battery circuit, your alternator circuit, your charging circuit, and how to work out whether it's your battery, your alternator, or the car draining power. Hopefully the voltage regulator pack should be here in the next few days, and we'll do a video on how to change that over and the results of that. So again, I hope the video has been helpful. I hope I've tried to be reasonably clear. I will put a link on eBay to where you can pick these. You can pick these multimeters up for about 10 quid, 12 quid off of eBay. Probably 15, 20 quid if you go to your local shop, because they've got to make money, they're running the shop, to do a test. Also, some cars have a voltmeter. You know, some of the Porsches, I believe, Clive's has got a voltmeter and oil pressure gauging. They're not, you know, they don't. Sometimes it's just like the needle. There's no real numbers on the needle, so it's just like in the middle is where it should be. If it's up, it's charging. If it's down, it's discharging. But a voltmeter, you know, on the car gives you some idea of what's going on all the time. And you can get these voltmeters that you stick in a cigarette lighter, and that'll do the same job. It gives you a visual view. Clive's got one. If I remember, when we do the alternator test, we'll shove that in the cigarette lighter and show you that. But basically it does the same thing. It means that when you get in the car, you close the door. The only problem actually on that front, with mine, the cigarette lighter is dead until you turn the ignition on. So you will show a slightly lower voltage because you've got the drain from all the ignition and that. But you turn the ignition on without starting the engine, it will show you the battery voltage. Watch it as you start the engine, and you'll see if your voltage drops below 9.6 as the car starts. Once the engine starts, it'll go up to 14.2 or whatever, 13.8, to show that it's charging. So one in the cigarette lighter shows you the state of your charging system pretty much all the time you're driving the car. So quite a good little device. You can get those. I'll put a link to a couple of those as well, because you can get them on eBay as well. It just means that you can monitor your whole battery charging system constantly all the time if you so wish. Personally, I don't. Used to in the old days, but it's boring now. So there you go. Hope that's been helpful. I hope that gives you some insight to that. Any questions, any comments, of course, put them in the comments box, let us know. And we will see you in the next video, which may be, because I'm still waiting for the lever die to turn up, so it may be playing around with the lever die, maybe fitting the regulator pack, because obviously I'm waiting for that to turn up. But whichever, it will be soon, so keep watching. Bye.